This podcast is proudly sponsored by Ricochet Exchange, the best way to DCA. Listen to the end of the episode for more information. All right, hello and welcome to a new episode of Decentra Talks. I am the host Ciro, and today I'm with Sunny from Superfluid. Sunny, could you please introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me, Sharif. I'm Sunny. I'm from Superfluid. I am on our developer relations team. So my job is to make the experience of building on top of Superfluid as good as possible and connect with developers to kind of form changes to our protocol. So I've been based out of Philly for basically my entire life, and I got into the space first working as a financial analyst, then kind of discovered data analysis, which then brought me into the financial technology area. Soon I started working with Mike again, and we founded something called Ricochet Exchange, which used superfluid technology heavily. And then after a little bit, I ended up flipping over to work at Superfluid. So here I am today, and happy to be talking about whatever we're going to talk about.
Thanks for explaining, and I kind of want to actually talk a bit about your role in Ricochet Exchange. So when I started, I guess working with them or doing bounties with them, I saw you were part of the community and you had a bigger role in how things were running. Um, so what was your role basically there? What kind of things did you do in the organization?
Yeah, so first off, I was the founder. I helped start Ricochet. I was there when we, kind of kicked off our first Rex market for dollar cost averaging, and we kind of began to solidify roles as time went on, as you see in most startups and businesses. So Mike definitely led the technical side of things, the technical leadership, how the markets were to be configured, the back ends, all that good stuff. Me, on the other hand, I began to take on more of the kind of like evangelist role. So I was doing a lot of the marketing, the Twitter, all that literature was on me. A good amount of business development, so reaching out to other protocols, trying to form partnerships, integrations, etc. And I think if I were to give myself a title, it would have been like head of marketing and business development. I also assist on the community side as well, on the end of setting up bounties, configuring community engagement, which is something that I found to be very important as I kind of got into the Web3 area, just how community based everything was. And I think that's just a good rundown as to what I did at Ricochet. It was a really big learning experience because I came from a more finance technical sort of analyst background, and so switching into something that was more kind of soft um, and do that from a leadership standpoint was really interesting. And I think overall, it was really cool seeing the amount of like really smart people that came into the community and were like really vested in the success of Ricochet. And all it was a really cool experience.
And at some point, you managed to get a job with Superfluid, and now you are doing a lot of the things that you used to do with Ricochet at Superfluid. And I honestly think you are one of the best people at expressing what you want in terms of, like, let's say a feature needs to be built out. You're really, really good at explaining how to get things done and providing the right amount of context and information. Same with documentation. So I find your writing very helpful, and this is something that I can't actually say for every project that I've worked with or on. It's something that is a lot harder to find. So there's a lot of people that are in this space that are very technical, but not a lot of people that are able to communicate properly and get a message across. So eventually you started working with Superfluid. Can you tell me a bit about the transitional period where you moved from Ricochet to Superfluid, and how was that? And what did you start doing at Superfluid?
Yeah, first off, really appreciate those kind words and writing. I think that's definitely been like a talent of mine, and so being able to like translate that over into documentation and how you convey technical concepts that are pretty complex into a very kind of digestible fashion has definitely been one of the biggest challenges of the job, and also something that I kind of enjoy and feel like I'm good at. So I'm glad that you kind of feel that as well. And yeah, so on how I got from Ricochet to Superfluid, well, first off, Ricochet obviously relies heavily on Superfluid. It uses Superfluid on the smart contract side to allow people to invest in automated fashion in real time, basically fixed rate investing or dollar cost averaging. And then it uses Superfluid's instant distribution agreement to blast tokens out to all the investors, kind of do like distributed buys in a sense. And so that really exposed me to Superfluid as a protocol. And so I found myself building a lot on top of it, understanding how it worked from a more nuanced lens than just kind of like a topical understanding that many people kind of only get when they kind of like spend time around a protocol, but they don't build with it. So doing a lot of building with Superfluid through Ricochet. Also, with my relationship with Mike, Mike was also familiar with the Uniwhales DAO, and the Uniwhales DAO is basically a on-chain analytics community. They look heavily into different things that are happening on chain with this analytics tool, and it's like a combination of like a DAO and like on-chain analytics tooling. And so I ended up getting a role there through Mike to build out this Superfluid subscription checkout called Drip. And basically, the goal of that was to allow people to subscribe to Drip, uh, subscribe to the Uniwhales DAO with Superfluid streams, kind of like do like a recurring on-chain subscription, and also have the ability to refer other people and earn kind of real-time revenue from their subscriptions. So that was really cool, and that kind of got me seriously into building with Superfluid. Like I think by the end of that, I was basically like super well versed in the protocol. I could preach it, I could evangelize it, I could talk all about it and help people with it. And so in building that and then working with Ricochet, I gained a really kind of close connection with the Superfluid team and people. In fact, when I met them in East Denver for the first time in person, like I basically knew them all by I was on a first name basis with all of them. So it was like a really kind of great connection off the bat. And it was really fortunate for me to have like those strong bonds off the bat. So eventually I came across a developer relations or developer evangelist job posting on their website, and I was kind of like coming to the realization at the time that I did need to achieve a more sustainable income. And at the time, Ricochet just could not offer that because we were a DAO and we were relying on governance tokens for kind of workforce powering and governance, and it just wasn't sustainable for me when it came to paying rent, getting groceries, etc. So ended up looking around and found that role at Superfluid and expressed my interest in it. And when it came time for the interview process, I just was the man for the job. So ended up getting that role and have been enjoying it ever since. It's been a minute. I've been working at Superfluid since May of last year, and I've been enjoying it all the way through. We're all great people, and couldn't be more happy.
Thanks for providing the context around that. It is really helpful to understand how you were able to kind of like level up in the space and move from one place to another and contribute on so many different projects. Um, and I'm glad to see you working with Superfluid. I think that you're definitely needed in any kind of community, especially the way DAOs work at the moment, where anybody can kind of enter and contribute with somebody that is a good communicator that is able to take these difficult technical concepts and break them down into easy to understand, simple to follow tasks. It makes things easier for everybody else that wants to contribute. So I think your role is very important there, and that's kind of why I wanted to have you on this podcast today. Hopefully, to learn a bit more about how you manage to. How do you communicate so well? But instead of like asking it like that, because that's a very general question, I guess I'll try to break this question down. So first, you are kind of a community manager, and you deal with a lot of different people in the community. What are some things that you find important for your success in that role?
Yeah, so I think a big part of being a DevRel engineer is you connect with developers and you have to be able to speak to them. You have to be able to kind of like have those interpersonal skills to engage them and further their kind of pursuits with your protocol, right? Like I'll talk to the developer and that developer may be trying to accomplish an integration with a certain protocol. Another developer may be trying to build a project from the ground up and wants to understand how Superfluid could be helpful for them. And so when it comes to communicating with them effectively and kind of building that community, you can apply a bunch of different strategies, I'd say. Uh, you know, I know at Superfluid when I got started here, I began to kind of think about different programs that I could apply that would systematically attract developers and kind of retain them. I think overall, uh, the way developer communities are formed is sort of in an orbit model, I would say. So, kind of at the outmost ring of the orbit, you have developers that are coming in, they're scratching the surface. Maybe they'll try your technology, maybe they'll just learn about it, but they're familiar with you. Then there are developers that actually pick up your technology, build a project, try it out. And then in the innermost of the orbit, you have people that actually apply your technology for use cases that actually, yield results and, come to fruition. And so along the way, you need to be able to retain the developers and the people that acquire skills and familiarity with your technology, right? And so if you have a very kind of cut and dry, not personal sort of developer experience, then these developers will kind of come and go, right? But if you can create a nice community and somewhere that developers will feel welcomed and encouraged and at times incentivized, those those developers will be more likely to try to take your technology and apply it across the realm, across the industry. And so that's something that we're seeing right now. We're applying this program called the Wave Pool. It's a recurring sort of hackathon on top of Superfluid, where basically every month developers can go apply projects to it and be in the running for different rewards and prizes. And it basically repeats every month. So it's open basically 24/7, 365. And yeah, we're finding that a lot of developers that have come into our community through various means are attracted to this hackathon and are staying in our community as a result. So one side is definitely that systematic kind of program based focus. The other side is just how you talk to people, right? So if I'm dealing with developers, I think a lot of this has come through my experience as being a TA and as being someone who was an analyst before and has to learn how to speak to business partners and break down kind of numbers into stories. Uh, you know, being able to basically not handhold, but more kind of like match the excitement of a developer, right? Like if someone is thinking about different ideas on what they can do with your technology and you're just kind of like, deflecting them to different pages in the docs and you're just kind of like, you know, answering them like it's just customer service and you're trying to, get them going, get them out the door. Um, you know, that's not really going to create a nice kind of like communal environment, which is so important in Web3 when we're talking about composability and kind of the fact that your technology can be applied all across the industry because of how composable smart contracts are. We could talk about that more, but that's a rabbit hole. But yeah, like you want to make sure that you're being interpersonal. You want to make sure that you're expressing enthusiasm constantly, and you also want to be very patient. I think if you're not empathetic, like you're going to struggle when it comes to building communities and when it comes to working with developers because uh, you have to be able to see from their eyes, right? When I'm like dealing with developer questions, not only am I thinking like, okay, here's how I answer this question, I'm thinking, okay, why is this person answering this question? Where is this misunderstanding coming from? And so when you can kind of put yourself in their shoes, you can kind of understand the gaps in your protocol explanations that are missing, the missing resources and improvements that can be made on the developer experience side. And so that kind of empathy breeds developer experience performance. And it's something that I've kind of seen over the last kind of year that I've been here. So yeah, I think that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question. I hope I shared some wisdom there.
No, that's a great answer. So there's a couple of things that I want to touch on here, and first is the wave pool. So I'm a developer myself, and one of the most incredible experiences of my life, I would say it's like in the top 10 things I've ever done, is go to a really big hackathon and just sit for a couple of days with random people and work on something to achieve a goal. There's this excitement. It reinvigorates my love for the technology because a lot of the times when you're working in tech, things can be very monotonous. If you're working with one single company or a single DAO and you're dealing with the same code base day in, day out, it could get monotonous and boring. But this hackathon where you have a very specific amount of time, you can't have started before or you can't keep going after, like in terms of if you want to get a reward for what you've done. And then there's also these different pieces that actually make it even better, which is the incentivization. So there's a reward, and that reward will only be given to a certain amount of people. So it breeds this competitive nature in people and makes them very excited, very driven, very focused. So I love what you guys have been doing with the wave pool. Um, I've seen a lot of different bounty programs in the Web3 space where people can just jump in and contribute. And I don't think it accomplishes the same thing that the wave pool does. I think that you guys are going to have a lot of success in it, and you are going to be setting a standard for DAOs moving forward into the future when people realize how impactful this is for building out the ecosystem and expanding your mark in the space. Um, there's also another thing that I kind of want to, there's a rabbit hole that I want to go down, which is dealing with developers. So uh, I've heard this a lot when I talk to business people, like in a project or in a team, in an ecosystem, you always have like developers and you have business management people, and they all have to communicate. And developers are notoriously bad at being, like at communicating to non-developers. So I know that you have a bit of a development background yourself. Do you say that helps you in terms of understanding and learning how to communicate with developers?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I'm going to give you a surprising answer. I think it's actually the opposite. I actually don't have that much of a developer background. I think that's one of the reasons that I'm pretty good at being a dev rel. The fact that I've never kind of like had a software engineer job title. I've been a Solidity developer, but that was kind of on a specific project. I've worked as a Python data analyst, broken down numbers, but I've never kind of like worked on a developer facing team. Um, my every single kind of position I've had has been really kind of it's been really integral to have strong communication skills, and I think the fact that that has been a common theme across all my professional experiences has kind of been what's been important and kind of has been what's helped me along the way as a dev rel, dealing with developers. I think it's refreshing when I'm working with developers for them when they find that on top of my communication, that I'm you know being personal, that I'm being enthusiastic, and yeah, I think you know you're right. It's sometimes hard for developers to communicate well because a lot of development is you have an idea and you're manifesting it and you're manifesting it hard, and it's all in your head, right? And so when it comes to pulling those ideas out of your head and expressing them to other people such that they can pick them up and help you, or you know get excited about the idea that you have. It's a whole nother kind of challenge. It's a whole nother kind of mode of thinking that you have to kind of like tackle as a developer. So um, I think kind of starting to marry those two skills together has been something that's been really beneficial, and I think I've been finding myself kind of you know maintain that kind of strong side as a communicator while kind of growing as a developer myself. For instance, recently I've been working on some dev tooling, which I'll be releasing to the Superfluid community at some point soon. And I made like a presentation for it. Like I broke it down really well. I explained it in depth, and people who are even non-technical were able to pick up and understand what was going on there. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, you have to kind of understand your audience. If you're a developer, are you teaching your whatever you're building to a non-technical audience? Are you teaching it to a an audience of developers? I think those kinds of common kind of themes of communication are always going to be present, uh, but you know it kind of is based on your needs, right? So me as a DevRel, communication is paramount. Um, but if you're like a software engineer who's kind of like maybe not a manager, just someone who's kind of like on the back end, just cranking away code, it may not be as essential to be a communicator, but it is always 100% in every single situation going to be a big asset to you to have the ability to communicate your ideas well and be able to see from the other side. I think I said this already, but having the ability to understand and like be receptive to when your ideas and when your communication is falling short, and iterate and close those conceptual gaps, those gaps of understanding is really important. I think that comes with empathy. That comes with being an active listener as well, and it comes with seeking feedback. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my 2 cents on kind of using my background to apply better communication skills here. I guess what you're kind of getting at with your question was like, oh, did your developer experience help you be a better communicator? And in reality, it was like my non-developer experience that helped me be a better communicator to developers. So yeah, that's my take.
That is a surprising answer. So, from because I never really knew you that well, so I knew you in terms of being in the same communities as you, meeting up in a few in-person meetups related to the space, but I didn't know your full story. And now that I look back at everything that you said, it makes a lot of sense. Um, it is one thing that a lot of developers I think do wrong is that they assume people can see inside their heads and they can see their vision, when the truth is that's something that they kind of have to figure out how to word correctly. Like what when a developer wants help with something, they don't usually specify like what do you need help with. If it's financial, how do you need that help? What are the things that are going into this? If you need technical help, how are you going to what kind of technical help do you need? So being able to have the empathy to listen and the patience to try and understand and coax a correct answer out of somebody that can help you help them. I see that how that could be a skill you gain outside of the development world. And I think that a lot of people do need to work on their soft skills in the space to achieve their fullest potential. So it's good. I didn't know that this was a whole role in itself, being a developer relations person. I think I spoke to Sam as well, and he's in a similar role, right? Like he deals with communicating with the developers. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, Sam is our developer relations lead. So I basically work under him, and yeah, he is hands down just perfectly suited for this job. He's an amazing communicator. I think you've seen him present as well. He really is a great presenter and has a great grasp of development. He's self-taught as well, just like me. So we kind of see eye to eye on that. And also just a great guy to be around. So um, yeah, he's a great leader as well. And it's been also like about a year and a half for him at Superfluid. So we're kind of a we're kind of dynamic duo.
Yeah, as you scale, you guys are you need more and more support in this area because now you're dealing with like hundreds or thousands of developers. That yeah, that could get very difficult very quickly. A couple. Well, I have one more question in and I guess in this sector is you have to deal with the global audience. So you're not only communicating with American developers, you also have developers from Europe, developers from India, and they are all from such different backgrounds, like linguistically and culturally. And you are kind of the thing is, all of them can perform at a very high level, but this language and cultural barrier sometimes can get in the way in other companies or DAOs. What are some difficulties that you find when dealing with a global audience, and how do you resolve those difficulties?
That is a really great question. So we definitely see it 100%. We have developers from across the globe. A lot of the folks I deal with are Indian. Uh, these people are really enthusiastic, have seemingly endless amounts of energy and enthusiasm for everything we kind of show them. And yeah, I think across the board, English is a pretty commonly spoken language, and so I'm able to communicate with them. Um, I think one thing that kind of unites all the cultures is just enthusiasm for the technology and the subject at hand. And so when I'm kind of like in there and I'm, you know, talking to these people and I'm just being energetic, like I'm being a sunny person, like people just vibe with that, right? People get it. And, you know, I think that just transcends culture. I think that transcends whatever language boundaries may be there as well. And yeah, I think code is code. Code does not kind of bend to different languages. The protocol is a protocol. However, the way you explain it across different kind of languages and cultures is a little nuanced. For instance, I know with Spanish, like we were thinking about like how we would explain superfluid in Spanish. Um, Fran, our CEO, is Italian. He also speaks Spanish and a bunch of, I think, a couple other languages. And so he was kind of like dealing with that with some Spanish people. And you know, there isn't really like a money streaming. When I say money streaming, like even when I say that in English, it's confusing, right? Because like by streaming, do you mean like I don't know, like media streaming? Like there's always going to be that kind of challenge of explaining, and like that kind of gets like compounded when you try to switch different languages. Like I know like they're thinking flujos de dinero, meaning like flows of money. That was kind of like I think what we landed on for Spanish. So yeah, there are definitely different kind of like challenges here and there when it comes to dealing with a global developer base. Uh, I like to just stay positive. I like to stay enthusiastic. People always get that. Um, yeah, not much more I would add there. I think also from the community side, you always want to make sure that people are feeling heard. So kind of recognizing the fact that oh, we have a lot of Indians here, right? We have a lot of um, Chinese people in our community. We have a lot of kind of people from France in our community. Like pointing out these nationalities and like kind of like shouting them out kind of makes people feel heard. And I think that's also a good thing when you're building a community, not just for developers. And yeah, I think another angle is like just engaging these people in person. So I've had the chance to travel, thankfully, through my work here at Superfluid. So I've gotten to go to different countries and meet people of different cultures. So last year, towards the second half of the year, I got the chance to go to Mexico and Bogota, Colombia, and I had the chance to basically engage the Latin American Web3 community and make a lot of friends and connections and understand how these people kind of grasp the protocol and how they kind of approached Web3 development and their energies. And yeah, I think just making those connections and talking, um, regardless of like your location and like having no bias when it comes to the kinds of locations you want to engage with, kind of like opens up a lot of doors and expands your horizons as well. It's pretty good stuff. So yeah, I think that's just kind of my overall rundown as to how I kind of
So
like think about that. Yeah.
to recap, just to make sure I understood this right, some of the things that you do to kind of close this difficulty gap is one, provide people a space where they could feel heard. So, for example, having channels in different languages. So, if somebody is
Yep.
Chinese and there's other Chinese developers, they can go and communicate with each other there. Two is meeting people in person. There's like this physical, language that we all speak, shaking hands, smiling. It helps people connect. Three would be, so there's the physical, there's making sure people feel heard, and then being positive. So your name is Sunny, like you're a sunny person. Being positive kind of transcends language as well. If people see you like smiling, if people hear you happy, even if things are not necessarily going perfectly well, it allows people to communicate better. So those are three things that you do to kind of deal with that. I can see. So we have a couple of people in the Ricochet community. Some are Chinese, some are uh, from different parts of Asia, and even though they're really, really good developers, it feels like they've hit a wall and they can't continue working with the DAO because there's nobody to communicate with. Like I can sense sometimes the difficulty in like trying to either explain something, explain your code, or answer a question or ask a question. So by providing that space for people, it helps. Um,
Hmm.
that's a great answer. Thank you. I want to talk a bit more about the documentation and the like writing tasks. So this is something that I struggle with personally. I am at a point now where I have people working with me, and sometimes I need to kind of distribute tasks upon multiple people when things are more difficult to deal with, and I struggle with expressing myself. What what do you do in the lead up to writing documentation or to writing a bounty or writing a request for the wave pool? What are some steps that you take to do that?
Yeah, that is a great question. Funny you mentioned the wave pool. I think one of the biggest reasons we made the wave pool was because we were tired of writing bounties. So we were like, okay, let's make this ongoing hackathon where we can suggest like ideas vaguely, and then people can get creative and just kind of come up with the and fill in the blanks on their own. But yeah, to talk about like things like creating bounties, creating specifications, creating documentation. Uh, it all first off starts with understanding where the kind of narrative is with your protocol. So, for instance, with Superfluid, we're a token centric protocol. Literally, all Superfluid is an extension of the ERC20 standard that allows you to move tokens in new ways. So, when you're creating this documentation, um, how do you want people to be perceiving your protocol from the development lens? And so, with Superfluid, that starts with the super token, right? So, once you understand that, okay, you can't stream plain USDC. You have to stream Super USDC. Um, and then you can understand, okay, this new kind of token has these different features on it, and here's how I go about engaging those features to do things like money streaming or instant distributions. So yeah, basically, you want to angle your developer docs in a way that exposes them to the super token first, and then plan out the developer journey in the path of most commonality, I'd say. So, for instance, the most obvious thing here is once you learn about super tokens, you got to learn about money streams because that is what people come across Superfluid for. That is our kind of like flagship kind of feature for our protocol. So, the next thing we try to expose them to is money streaming. And then after that, if they're interested, instant distributions. And then from there, they can graduate to more advanced concepts such as super apps, those being smart contracts that react to money streams, and then provide auxiliary resources as needed. So when we're first identifying that overall structure and that, so once we've identified that overall structure and that kind of knowledge journey we want developers to go down when it comes to finding the protocol, and kind of finding what they need, um, we then kind of like plot out like how we're going to communicate, right? Like what are our language rails? I like to say. So, for instance, with Superfluid, we had the term money stream, right? However, some a bunch of our function names are like create flow, not like create stream. Um, you know, So what's the difference between a stream and a flow, right? Well, we have to make sure that that's clear because if we keep on like swapping the terms around, like it can get confusing for developers reading the documentation. And so we kind of like specify like streaming as a verb, flow is a noun, and we make sure to conform to that as we go about writing our documentation. We make sure to understand like the granularity we want to get to. So, do you want to explain this at the lowest level, like from the protocol side, and like get all the way deep into the code there? Answer is really no, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that developer can go in there and find what they need and not have to understand like all these like shenanigans behind what's going on. They just want to get the answer, right? And so making sure that that's at that right level of granularity is important. And I think we've kind of like nailed that with our docs actually. We're pretty good with that. And also then once you're kind of playing out those docs and you kind of got the granularity and kind of communication rails, you sort of want to iterate, and the way you iterate is kind of like by treating the docs as a product, right? The docs are a product that you offer to developers. Um, it's a source of literature where they can find the answers to how to interact with the protocol, and so by kind of like running a product management process in the docs, introducing new features or things that need to be added to the docs based off of changes to the protocol or feedback from developers. It's important to have that kind of structuring to how you manage your documentation improvement. And so at Superfluid, we just use a Kanban board, right? We get feedback, we create tickets, and we move those tickets across the board based on our work capacity. So yeah, I think that's kind of like the fundamentals when it comes to creating like good, I'd say Web3 documentation. Um, you know, knowing when to understand like when developers are coming in with different premonitions is important too. For instance, I know um, with Superfluid, there's kind of like an expectation of uh, like you have an ERC20 token, right? And that has like a transfer, and then that has like a approval, and that has like a um, you know, the approval being like what lets you like lets another account spend tokens on your behalf. Transfer being like what lets you, you know, move tokens in discrete amounts. How do you kind of like mock up your docs in a way that kind of like matches that initial understanding that most developers have? And so we kind of like to play on that as well. So for instance, when I'm talking about um, the the money streaming, I liken that when I'm talking about ACL, that being the feature of Superfluid that allows you to have another account start streams on your behalf. I will liken that to ERC20 approvals. When I'm talking about transfers versus money streams, I just say like money streams are like transfers, but with a rate of change involved, a per second rate of change. Just thinking about those kinds of parallels when you're writing documentation is useful as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my overall philosophy.
So what I understood is that there's a lot of steps to producing good documentation, good task specifications, and good requests. First of all, well, we're talking from a DAO perspective here. This changes on a more personal perspective, but you need to have a narrative to what you want to get across. So with Superfluid, that narrative is money streaming. Next, you need to have a structure that is able to take the developer on a journey and introduces that developer to the language that Superfluid uses. So, like create flow, delete flow, all of this stuff is terminology that is related to how your product works. So, you need to walk that developer through understanding each part that they need, controlling the granularity of what explaining. So if you are trying to explain something to somebody that is using the tool, it might help to not be as specific as when you would want to explain something to somebody that is building those tools. Um, and then likening what you're trying to describe to pre-existing concepts that the developers most likely have already interacted with. Your example was Superfluid is an extension to the ERC20 token standard. Um, you liken the create flow to the transfer function. The approval is very similar, and you use these ideas that they already have in their head, and then you build on top of them. So That's really detailed. That's really good information. I think that that's going to be helpful for me and hopefully for anybody listening in. Um, I want to ask you a couple questions just about you, mostly, and being working on a project and that is so big and has so many different like parts to it. Uh, Managing your time must be difficult. How do you manage your time, and what are some things that are important for keeping yourself on track?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great question, and it's definitely something that I struggle with off the bat. When I first came to Superfluid, I discovered that I really didn't have much of a manager who was kind of like setting the goalposts in front of me and telling me where to go and what to do. So being able to like come up with my own kind of initiatives, coming up with my own kind of like game plan as to what I was going to do with my time each day and keep it structured was not easy, especially as someone who came from like more of like a larger corporate environment. I worked at basically Vanguard was like the company I worked at before I worked at Superfluid. And so like obviously, Vanguard being, the largest asset manager in the world to Superfluid being a startup based out of London, there's definitely like a big kind of change when it came to, creating, my own kind of like workflow and my own kind of like work schedule. So the way I navigated it, and it was definitely like a process of trial and error, was I started off by when I first started off, I was like big tasks for myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to create, I'm going to improve. All right, so here's one task. I'm going to create a protocol overview, right? This big task where I basically create a big section or documentation that explains Superfluid at a high level to anyone in a non-technical basis. That is something that will take you that took me like weeks, if not a couple of months to accomplish. And I simply had it like a single line task um, that I was like going to accomplish, right? In reality, put down a big task like that and you just leave it there and it's not moving across the board. It's not really like you're not feeling that kind of sense of progress because it's binary. It's like, okay, this task is not done yet, and I'm trying to get it to done yet. Um, it's a little demotivating, right? So what I discovered, and I kind of like shout out to Sam for kind of helping me like reason with this, was that you really want to take these kinds of large tasks that you discover and these large tasks that you take on and chunk them down into individual kind of components and pieces. So, for instance, like with that protocol overview I was talking about, you want to chunk it down into like an introduction page, a super token page, a super agreement page, etc. And just seeing these kinds of individual parts of the larger sum of the task get completed one by one and kind of iterating down and completing the checklist and checking the boxes, it makes you feel so much more accomplished and it makes you also more productive because you feel the momentum and you feel more guided towards that end goal. And so it kind of like made me become a stronger believer in like planning and structuring to tasks and like chunking them down. Not just from like the productivity side and the planning side, but also from the emotional kind of motivation side. So yeah, also, as you can imagine, to the other side of your question, like Superfluid, we're a startup, we wear a lot of hats. There's endless amount of work that you can take on. So a big part of it is prioritization. So yeah, I think a big part of this is just like talking with your team, right? Like understanding what's top of mind, what aligns most with what we're trying to set out for this quarter and our kind of like objectives and key results. Uh, you know, that'll help you kind of like have that kind of back of your head guidance when you're going about discovering these different to-dos and picking which ones to take on first and kind of like selecting your workload. And yeah, I think that's kind of like an overall kind of like philosophy there. Yeah, if I have any more ideas, I'll DM you.
I got you. So, in terms of like managing your time, one thing that you've learned working in a fast-paced startup is um, kind of divide and conquer. Take any bigger task, any bigger ambition that you have, and break it into the smallest doable parts that you can accomplish. That's going to help you stay motivated. It's going to help you feel like you're on track to actually completing what you need. That's definitely something that's been helpful in my life. It's even an approach to software development. It's like a whole strategy of divide and conquer. You take any big problem, break it up into as many small problems as you can, and solve one at a time until the big problem is fixed.
Oh yeah, I
So
think I
that
would also add, like, I think now that you say that, a big part of this is like being specific, right? You want to make sure that when you define a task, you're not just being, you know, here's this big idea that I want to get done. When you're being able to like define clearly what the goalposts are and work towards that, it becomes a lot more like, you know, appetizing to take on. It's not as confusing. It's clear what success looks like. And I think being able to define success and then also set like deadlines and be just ultra specific um, is important as well. Just thought I would add that in there.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that clarity. Um, so I have like three more questions. I'm really conscious of your time. Thank you so much for doing this. It means a lot to me because I've learned a lot from this. So the first question that I have is you worked at Vanguard. From my understanding, Vanguard is one of the two or three biggest investor companies and like probably the wealthiest and strongest companies out there. And you moved off from that and you moved into the Web3 space. Why did you choose to do that? Because from what I would imagine is that there's better job security at bigger companies like that. It's easier to move along. You have people telling you what to do and how to do it. The chances of getting fired or losing your job are probably smaller. What motivated you to make this move?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it came down to just interest. Like I was simply more interested in blockchain and Web3, and I was originally working as a financial analyst, and I realized that like corporate finance was pretty boring, and I couldn't see myself really like kind of pushing numbers around Excel spreadsheets for a career, and so started tackling Solidity and smart contract development, and realized that this was a much more fun space, and that I could like actually like live while I work, like instead of like just going to work for the sake of working. Like I really enjoy my days and my time here at Superfluid. Like I feel alive when I work, and I think that's something that is a luxury. But I was able to kind of like get that luxury, and I think that's one thing that I really am grateful for. Being able to work here in this Web3 space, just how fun it is at the bottom line. And yeah, obviously Vanguard's a much bigger company. I think it's definitely got great kind of like career prospects when it comes to vertical development, but being at a startup teaches you so much. And I think having like at least a year of experience, before you're 23 or 24, working at a startup like really teaches you how to be responsible. It really teaches you how to be your own manager and lead. And I think that's something that I've had opportunities and have opportunities to do every single day when I'm at Superfluid, right? I'm given ownership of the wave pool. I'm given ownership over this kind of developer feature that we're working on, this and that, and it's uh it's taught me a lot, and it's put me kind of like it's made me wise and more mature than I would have gotten kind of like working my way through the ranks of a corporate company. Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of like the pros for that.
And then you also said that you're a self-taught developer. I'm also a self-taught developer. I know Sam is as well. It's interesting that with whatever education you were going through, as well as your job, as well as all the other things that you were doing, that you managed to squeeze in the time to learn how to code. Was your first language Solidity?
My first language was Python. I wanted to learn Python so that I could get good with data analysis because that was an important kind of like growing area when it came to the finance space, like being able to pull data, create nice kind of like Python scripts that would analyze it and help you tell your story. So yeah, definitely got into Python for more of a data analysis angle as opposed to like software development or software engineering angle. Um, so that was a lot of fun. Python was easy to pick up. Actually, before that, I did Java in an AP computer science class in high school. So that was enjoyable actually. Just learning about those like basic semantics and kind of core programming logic. Just like doing sorting algorithms and data structures, all that good stuff. Definitely kind of attracted me to the computer science field. But yeah, after Python came Solidity. So started writing smart contracts, and that just absolutely blew my mind. Right, like you are writing with probably like 25 lines of code, you can create like a bank account, like effectively a bank account. You can program money like that. Like I that just clicked with me, just like the fact that I was able to program digital value so effortlessly and so permissionlessly was what really kind of like attracted me to Solidity and the space in general. So that was good stuff. And then obviously with Solidity came JavaScript because you need to know that stuff in order to test your smart contracts and interact with them. So yeah, that was kind of like the language journey, and it's just amazing like how Solidity kind of like opened my eyes like that.
It's so interesting that you Solidity really clicked with you. I think it's incredible that now I can basically open a shared bank account in the form of a Gnosis safe with my partner and I, and we can share expenses, and we can invest, we can do so many different financial things, and we don't have to have a bank account. We don't have to show our identification cards. We don't have to go through these very difficult processes, and this technology works anywhere in the world. You could drop me anywhere and I can still have access to my money, which is not the case with regular banks and Visa and MasterCard. The more out there you go, the more difficult it is for that stuff to work properly or at all. So it is mind-blowing for me. I started with Ruby, then moved on to JavaScript, TypeScript, and now I'm trying to get into Solidity very, very slowly. Not Solidity, Rust. And for me, I really love the system stuff, like being able to just manipulate information and build things. It makes me so happy and like occupied, and I absolutely love it. I would hope that if some people listening eventually are interested in maybe learning a strong skill that will keep you fed and happy, try to learn how to code. If it's for you, it could do wonders in your life. The last question I had for you is, what's next for Sunny? What are you working on? Where are things going for you?
Yeah, great question there as well. I'd say that the next, yeah, so quarter we've got like a bunch of core kind of like DevX improvements to work on. For instance, we're working on ways to improve the experience of building super apps. Those mean smart contracts that are built with reactivity to money streams. Um, we're also working on kind of like rebuilding our narrative. So with recent kind of like abstractions and changes to our libraries, our the experience of building with Superfluid and the smart contract side has become even more token centric. And so we're working on different ways to like spin our docs and our communication in ways that are more token centric and uh, you know as a result even more simple. And so there's some like really important developer experience changes to be made there. So definitely just going to be the heads down, just grinding that stuff out over the next kind of like maybe like 2 quarters. And then obviously there's a developer experience evangelism side to things. So we'll be doing some traveling, going to different conferences, doing workshops, spreading the word to developers about Superfluid. Uh, I may participate in some hackathons myself. The adrenaline of that never gets old. Um, So might hack something together. And yeah, I think outside of all that, um, I'm actually still in college. So this is my last term of university. And after that, I'll be graduating. So that's on the horizon. And really looking forward to that. It's been a long time coming. And so after my 4 years, just, it's off to the races and we'll be definitely celebrating that. So yeah, I think that's kind of what's on the horizon for me. And yeah, looking forward to it all.
First of all, congratulations on not only being able to complete your college education or almost complete it, but also be a part of so many different companies and DAOs and being able to influence the lives of so many developers. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure other developers, to have these opportunities and to have somebody that's able to validate our work and effort and guide us into making money, providing value, and getting work experience. So I want to say thank you for that. It is great work that you're doing. And in terms of Superfluid, I'm throwing this out there. Maybe it'll somebody's going to hear it, but it would be great to have something in Superfluid similar to like Next.js or Create React app, where you put a CLI command and it generates a template website similar, not a template, a template contract similar to what, um, I don't remember what it was called.
Open
They
Zeppelin
use it for
Wizard.
Open Zeppelin Wizard, yeah. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there because people can throw together. Because from what I looked in the wave pool and bounties, there's like some themes of contracts that kind of get repeated. One of them is DCA. A lot of people are interested in building that. It's a great tool. It's a great thing to build. So having these kinds of templates that people can generate through a CLI, it's going to save them time. It's going to improve their developer experience, and it's going to make it more likely for people to adopt Superfluid and to try many different types of projects versus having to spend all this time like configuring a project, setting it up. If you guys save that time and provide those templates, I think it will click with a lot of people. But again, I'm not, I don't know much, so this is something that probably has to be discussed. Yeah, that's definitely what I see would be the most motivational for people like me who are not necessarily Solidity developers to actually try to build something on the Solidity side. If we can get that time saved in the like a starter template, it would be great.
Hmm.
Um, but all right. Thank you guys for listening. I'm going to leave links below to both the Superfluid docs, the Discord, and if you don't mind, Sunny, your Twitter. Um, and yeah, I hope we get to speak again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a really fun conversation, and yeah, hope you have a great weekend.
Invest smarter, not harder. Ricochet Exchange helps you dollar cost average into cryptocurrencies, including ETH and Bitcoin. By dollar cost averaging, you increase your potential returns and reduce market volatility. It is an easy way to invest, and it is mostly automated. All you need is a cryptocurrency wallet like MetaMask and Coinbase, and you can connect to Ricochet Exchange. The links will be in the description. You can start a stream to any of the tokens. If you need support or help, you can contact me directly, and my links will be in the description. Thank you for listening, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.